Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions. I hope you guys all had a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you happen to celebrate. This is likely the last Corman Productions video for 2020. It's been a heck of a ride. Today we're talking about This Is Us, Season 1, Episode 7, The Best Washing Machine in the Whole World, in which Jack and Rebecca spend an entire episode buying a washing machine. Okay, I'm kidding. That didn't actually happen. But I have no doubt that if the show decided to make such an episode, they would wring plenty of emotion out of it. In this episode, Randall and Kevin grapple with their relationship in multiple different timelines, including a new timeline as we see the kids in their teens. Toby decides he's done with dieting. William and Beth get a chance to bond, and a secret comes out. This is another fantastic episode. Season 1 was really magic. The show was at its peak, at its best, in Season 1 and 2. But before we dive in, there's two things I want to say. One, this is not a spoiler-free video, per usual. And two, if you like my content, please subscribe to my channel so you can be notified when a new video comes out. Despite the title, the washing machine is not actually a big factor in this episode. We start with a montage where we don't see our characters, we just hear them in voiceover, but we do see the washing machine, which is about to fail. Eventually, leading to a brand new washing machine, which Rebecca seems very pleased with. Perhaps a little too pleased. After the montage, we settle into what amounts to a brand new timeline for the series, at least up to this point. The kids, the big three, are now teenagers. We start off with Kevin and Randall late at night. Randall is trying to do homework, while Kevin is trying to sleep because it's 2 o'clock in the morning. Randall is played by Niles Fitch, and Kevin is played by Logan Schroyer. Niles Fitch is absolutely convincing as a young teen Randall. Logan Schroyer significantly less so, and I've talked at length in the past videos exactly why that is. The long and short of it is, he lacks Justin Hartley's charisma, which is not a crime in itself because not many people have that level of charisma. Logan Schroyer does a fine job throughout the series, but here I found him to be a little bit flat. Kevin finally gets annoyed with Randall enough to throw a football in his direction to get him to stop and turn off the lights, which causes soda to spill on Randall's homework. Kevin feels bad enough about that to try to help, but he grabs a blanket of Randall's, which is apparently the blanket that Randall was wrapped up in when he was originally brought to the hospital. They eventually get into a loud argument, which brings Rebecca into the room, who wants to know what could they possibly be fighting about at 2 o'clock in the morning. An interesting tidbit is dropped in that Randall is on the football team now. Kevin brings up an interesting point, asking, why does Randall suddenly have to be on the football team? And I think the answer is, Randall is seeking Kevin's approval, which is not working out for him too well. I don't know if that's fully the reason why Randall is on that football team, but I have a feeling it at least plays a part. I'm not sure if he's still at Haynes Academy, if they have a high school program, or if he's at some equivalent school at this point. The end result of this scene, despite Randall trying to make peace, is that Kevin ends up moving into the basement. We cut to the present day timeline where Kevin is jogging and seems to know all of Randall's neighbors, which is quite honestly the most Kevin thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Eventually, he spots Randall just up ahead, and he tries to catch up with him. Kevin's intentions seem to be about having a friendly jog with Randall, but Randall speeds up, and so does Kevin, and soon they are out trying to outrun each other. Cut to both men entering the kitchen to greet Beth. Kevin mentions that he ran for 6 miles. Randall congratulates him and says he did 8. Kevin, before leaving the scene, clearly annoys Beth. He's starting to feel like he's taking over their house, or at the very least, like that he's taking over her office. After he leaves, Randall promises Beth a Kevin-free evening, saying that the two of them are going to have dinner. Beth seems surprised at this, surprised that the two of them would be having dinner alone. But as it turns out, their mom is supposed to go with them. But Randall is surprised at Beth's surprise that the two of them would actually have dinner together. They do, after all, live in the same house. They spend plenty of time together. But Beth points out, yeah, but they're never alone together in the same room. Randall defends against the point, saying that they just went for a run together. Beth is skeptical, and rightly so, because that was not a run together. That was more like a race, but never mind. Beth makes a reference that it didn't work for Cain and Abel. Randall says, they aren't Cain and Abel, but if they were, he would be Cain, right? Because Cain was the one that won. And Beth is basically like, yeah, whatever helps you sleep at night, Randall. I mean, she doesn't exactly say that, but she very much says it in her tone. The scene ends with Randall's watch informing him that he just had the fastest run ever. And that was no doubt because he was trying to beat his brother. We cut to Kate, who is working out and doing everything she can to lose weight, only to lose just a pound at the weigh-in at the group meeting. Meanwhile, Toby has lost 9 pounds and met his monthly goal. This news is met by celebration from the other members. Kate tries to pretend like this doesn't bother her. She plays the supportive girlfriend for a little bit before taking off from the scene. And credits. When we come back, we see Jack in the teen timeline. Now, when I first saw this episode, we had no idea when Jack died and if he was still alive at this point in their lives. So when he showed up, I was pretty relieved to see him. I've praised Mandy Moore's talents plenty during the course of this series, because she has to play Rebecca in many different timelines, including a much, much older version of the character, and she does so convincingly. Milo Ventimiglia as Jack does not get the same opportunity, because he doesn't get to play an older Jack. Nevertheless, he does a great job doing just that, playing a more middle-aged version of the character. I'd say he's probably 44, 45 years old at this point in the series, and you can definitely tell the difference from the younger version of his character. He's a much more wearier person. He seems more tired. And him and Rebecca seem very out of sync. They are very clearly having marital issues. There's a tension there. Rebecca doesn't remember something that Jack told her about closing a deal that he has to go to the office for today. Jack half-heartedly says that he will make it, or try to make it, for the football game between Randall's team and Kevin's team that's supposed to happen that same night. And Jack nearly leaves to go to work without kissing Rebecca goodbye. This tension is not resolved during the course of this episode, and indeed will play a big part of how the season ends. Also not resolved during the course of this episode is the teenage problems between Kevin and Randall, because they can't be. They still have that problem as adults. One thing I forgot to mention, Rebecca has a rehearsal that night for the first time in quite some time. Jack's support seems lukewarm at best. Cut to the present day timeline where Kevin is waiting very bored in Randall's office for Randall to get out of a meeting. He looks around the office and finds a picture of Randall with his mother, and he has a very complicated reaction to that picture. Randall enters the scene, talking to Rebecca on the phone. We don't see the older Rebecca in this episode. Kevin keeps insisting that he wants to talk to Mom, but Randall hangs up the phone without letting him do so, and that was very much intentional. Rebecca was canceling the dinner plans, which means that the only two people left that are supposed to go are Randall and Kevin, who enjoy a very awkward relationship. Kevin gives Randall an out, suggesting that if he has work to do, they could totally cancel. But Randall says no, he doesn't have any work to do. He tries to give Kevin an out, suggesting that if he has to memorize lines for the play that he's doing, that they could totally cancel. But like his brother, Kevin declines to cancel. This scene between them is very amusingly awkward. We then cut to our first William scene of the episode. It was revealed earlier that William had a round of chemo, and he wasn't reacting too well to it, so he was still sleeping. He looks very much like he's struggling. Beth suggests that maybe some pot could help. And William, who seems to like the idea, doesn't like the idea of sending Beth out to score some drugs on his behalf. But, as it turns out, Beth has a hidden stash somewhere. She suggests that after dinner, after the girls are in bed, the two of them can hang out and smoke some pot. This is actually the first time that we learned that Beth's father died of cancer, which we will later get more information on when we have a Beth episode. And Beth's father will be played by Carl Lumbly. But we'll get to that when we get to that episode. We cut to Kevin and Randall entering some type of fancy restaurant that's very loud, and it quickly becomes apparent why Kevin chose the place. Because it's loud, and it'll make it harder for Kevin and Randall to have awkward small talk. It doesn't take long for Randall to glean that that's the reason why they're there. Kevin mentions that the last time he was at that restaurant, he came with Mario Lopez. Randall doesn't know who that is, but I do. In case you don't know, he played Slater on Saved by the Bell, and is part of the Saved by the Bell reboot that I intend to do a video on, probably early next year. We see Rebecca's rehearsal, and apparently the rehearsal is with someone that Rebecca used to know in Ben, played by Sam Trammell, who I don't recognize at all, but he's been around. He has 69 credits to his name and some things that I have seen, including a movie called Imperium with Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter fame. Ben is a character that we will see again. He's in 4 episodes of this series, and he causes problems for the Pearsons later in the season. But for now, Rebecca's rehearsal seems to go well, and she gets the gig. Cut to Kate, who is having trouble reaching Toby. She is under the impression that he is mad at her for departing the group meeting so early and in such haste. After failing to reach him, she just goes to his house. And when Toby opens the door, he's acting highly suspicious. Toby quickly tells her that he is not, in fact, mad at her, and he just noticed that she called. But he's acting like there's a woman in there, honestly. That's what I expected to see. But that's not what he's hiding at all. As it turns out, he's been binge eating, snacking. Toby looks sheepish, and Kate is not pleased. Toby declares his intentions to stop dieting, to stop depriving himself. Kate pretty much thinks that this is the end of their relationship, or that it will lead that way, because she is trying to lose weight at this juncture in the series. But Toby insists that their relationship can still work. Toby says that when they are together, he will eat the way she does. And to prove it, they should go to dinner so that she can see that this will work just fine. Skeptical, and honestly, so am I. Cut to the past timeline, where we see the first appearance of Hannah Zeal as the younger teen Kate. I've praised the talents of Hannah Zeal before. In my view, she's the best of the three teen actors. She 100% captures Kate. Here, though, she only gets the one scene. I mean, she's in others, but this is the only time that she actually gets to speak. Randall happens by, and she suggests that Kevin and Randall are way too intense together, and maybe he should try lightening the mood. He takes her advice. He goes down to see Kevin with some milk and cookies. He tries to make some jokes, but Kevin's not having anything to do with it. He wants Kevin to get out of space, move down to the basement to get away from him. Cut to William and Beth, who are clearly high, having eaten some pop brownies. And my God, is this pair fun in this episode. It was a joy to watch. Tess comes down the stairs saying, "Hey, I thought I smelled chocolate." And Beth tells her that they're adult brownies, which they very much are, and says they'll make brownies for kids the next day. She sends Tess back up the stairs to go back to bed, and basically tells her not to wake her sister. After Tess leaves, Beth asks, was she walking or was she floating? And they both laugh again. And Beth has an amazing laugh. I don't think I've ever heard her laugh quite like that before, or since, honestly. William says he feels bad for cramping everybody's style, but Beth poo-poos that, saying that he is not the one that's crowding everybody out, that Kevin is the problem. Back at the dinner with Randall and Kevin, Kevin ends up spotting a series regular from the show The Manny. Randall doesn't recognize him, leading Kevin to wonder if Randall ever watched The Manny. Randall tries to pretend that he actually did watch the show, but he does a really bad job at it. Kevin gets mad and storms out of the place. Cut to Toby and Kate, who are having a good time at dinner. When the waitress comes by and asks about dessert, Toby says no, but Kate insists that she should bring him the menu. Toby seems surprised by this, And Kate is basically like, look, if you can't eat this stuff in front of me, you're going to do it behind my back. So basically, you're going to be lying to me. And that's not going to work. So why don't you just have your dessert, and I'll deal with it. That is a more credible theory than Toby's, but it's still not going to work. I'm sorry guys, but that just does not work. When you are in a relationship with two addicts, or rather when you have a relationship where you are both addicts, let's say you're alcoholics, or drug addicts, or in this case, food addicts. If you guys decide to quit drinking, quit doing drugs, go on a diet. When one stops doing that, one of two things is going to happen. Either that relationship is over, or the other one, who is trying to still diet or not do drugs or not drink anymore, is going to fall off the wagon. When it comes to this, you are either on the same page or it's not going to work. This relationship cannot work with Kate dieting and Toby not. It's as simple as that. It was no surprise to me at all when they ended up breaking up over this issue. We cut to the past timeline with the football game. Jack makes it. Ends up asking Rebecca about her rehearsal, and she briefly gets talked about it before she's interrupted by someone that Jack knows. And then Jack says, well, we'll talk about it later. That never ends up happening. The rest of the scene confuses me. It confuses me because I don't understand why people react the way they do. It doesn't actually make sense. I get what they were going for, but it doesn't quite work. Randall is apparently playing defense. And during a play, Randall ends up sacking Kevin. And Kevin acts like that's some kind of betrayal. He ends up looking at Randall on the sideline, acting like he betrayed him somehow. But isn't that what Randall is supposed to do? Supposed to take it easy on his brother and not try to sack him? It would seem to me that it would be understood that if you're playing against each other, you're going to be trying to play to win. Now, when they start punching each other, that's when it's out of line. When they start fighting each other. But the sack before was just Randall playing to win, which is exactly what he should be doing. The other thing is, I'm not totally clear on Randall's motivations here. He's hurt because Kevin turned down his overture at peace and told him to get a life. I'm guessing that hurt ended up translating into anger, which I admit I do sometimes, which he then proceeded to take out on Kevin on the football field. First sack, fine. He's just doing what he's supposed to be doing. The second time he tackles him is okay, until they start actively fighting each other. That's when things are out of line. In the present day timeline, Randall is chasing down Kevin. He's saying he's just going to go back to his hotel room. Beth would be happy at that news. Randall offers him $1,000 if Kevin can tell him right now what he does for a living. Kevin answers that he's a Wall Street guy. Randall says, okay, but what does that mean? And Kevin really can't answer other than to say Ponzi schemes, which doesn't seem to be what Randall actually does. And Randall says, the point is, you don't know what I do, and that's okay. Randall asks, what difference does it make whether I watched the Manny or not? You hated the show. And Kevin responds, not at first. At first, I was proud of the show. And Kevin goes on to say he invited every single one of them, every single member of the family, to tapings and Kate was the only one that showed up. This plays into Kevin's history of being the forgotten middle child. Randall tries to make a joke, saying that Kate had to go because he was paying her, which is when he notices a billboard. The billboard is of the new Manny, who happens to be black. If he's a recognizable actor, I can't quite tell who he is. Randall finds it pretty funny. Kevin less so. He comes out with, "Oh great, replaced by another black man." Yikes. I was considering doing a video kind of analyzing whether Kevin was racist or not. He seems pretty clueless about the Black Lives Matter stuff in the current 5th season that's airing. He had that little comment to William about whether he could read or not. And now this. My conclusion really is that I don't think he's actively racist or hateful, but just sort of clueless. And there's definitely some issues here. Randall, of course, takes exception to this. Randall wants to know what that means. Randall insists that Kevin tells him exactly what he's harboring. Kevin spits out that he always got special treatment. Randall's like, "Because I'm black?" Kevin says no, because he was black and because he was adopted. And Randall's all like, "Well, gee, I certainly hit the jackpot there. I couldn't have had it any easier." And Kevin fires back, "In our house you did. With our mother you did." Kevin, in anger, insists, "Why can't you just admit it? Why can't you admit that you were more important to Rebecca, our mother? She aimed to make Randall feel special every single minute of every single day, so that he wouldn't feel like the odd man out." And Randall was like, "Well, gee, Kevin, I wonder why that is." And this time it's him trying to end the conversation. Randall says that Kevin treated him like a dog. What he wanted was respect. And Kevin, now really angry, says, "You didn't want respect. You wanted to show me up. Like you did every single chance that you got." Again, Randall tries to walk away from the conversation. And you know, the funny thing about this scene is that it very much resembles, not necessarily in content, but in style, the argument they had in the season finale of season 4. Except that one didn't get physical. Kevin says that in any other family, he would have been the star. And Randall's like, "You were no star." And he points at the billboard with the black man. "That's a star." And they start shoving each other. And it's kind of hilarious. They basically just end up shoving each other, and then they both grab each other and end up falling on the ground while people look on. Seth Meyers makes a cameo here, asking if Kevin's alright. Seth Meyers recognizes Kevin and asks if Kevin is okay. They both realize that there's now a crowd looking at them, taking pictures. And Kevin basically tells him, "Hey, this is my brother." And Seth is like, "Okay," and takes off. They hear police sirens in the background. And Randall thinks it's a good idea to take off running. Kevin and Randall both go running. And this is a wise decision, because we all know what happens when the cops show up. Cut to William and Beth, who are now on the lawn. At night, looking at the stars, further bonding. Beth talks about her big family, how she had like all these brothers and sisters living in the house with only one bathroom. She couldn't wait to live alone. No husband, living in some art studio. And William asks, "What happened?" "I met your damn son," she says. And William ends up chuckling. One look in his eyes, and he ruined everything. William says that he always lived alone. Now he has Randall, and Beth, and the girls. and Kevin. He has a family now, and it makes him sad to die. And there's a rather long pause as they look up at the stars. William ends up quoting a poet, and Beth joins in. William seems surprised at this. He asks her, "How do you know that?" And Beth says, "It's in a book of poems that Randall has had since he was a baby." And William, who is super high at this point, forgets himself. And he says, "Oh yeah, the one I gave to Rebecca." There is no record scratch here, but I heard a record scratch. Oops. William just accidentally spilled the beans. William, who's realized the mistake he's just made, tries to be like, "Oh, I'm feeling kind of tired, I have to go to bed." And Beth is like, "Nuh-uh, you're not cancering your way out of this." We cut away before we hear what William has to say, but we know what he's going to say. In the past timeline, we have a very awkward family scene as the Pearsons are walking to their car after the football game. Jack is pissed. He tells the boys to get in the car and that they will talk big time at home. We don't see that conversation. I'm sure that made for a real fun ride home. The last thing we see of the teens, before we cut away, is Kevin and Randall looking glum. When we cut to the present day timeline, Randall is driving home with Kevin and arriving at the doorstep. Nicely done, guys. I like that. After a long silence, in which both men clearly want to speak, Randall says, "You're right. I did get special treatment. Rebecca did take my side more often than not. And I ate up all that love because I couldn't get it from the one person I really wanted it from." From Kevin himself. Kevin listens silently on, with empathy. Randall continues to say that back there, when they were having that fight, when Kevin said, "He's my brother," that's the first time that Kevin ever said that. That's the first time that Kevin ever claimed him. Kevin tries to say that there must have been other times that couldn't possibly be true. But nope, that is true. And all Kevin can say, understanding Randall's hurt here for the first time, is wow, that sucks. Cut to William and Beth in the living room. The scene is much less fun now. The pot is clearly worn off. Learning that Rebecca had known about William's existence for Randall's entire life, I guess would tend to do that. Beth is saying that she's gonna go tell Randall. And William is basically like, no, you can't do that. And Beth is like, "What do you mean I can't do that? This is my house and I'm gonna do it. This is my husband. This is my marriage. How can I keep this a secret?" And William replies that the closeness that Randall has with his mother, if you tell him this, it'll destroy that relationship. This is when Kevin and Randall arrive home. They clearly sense that they're hiding something. Randall ends up suspecting that it's the pot, which he's just basically like, "Oh, cool, you guys smoke pot, sweet." And here is where my question about whether William and Kevin ever shared a scene together, back a couple episodes, is answered. Yes, they in fact were in scenes together after that episode. And I'm pretty sure they're together in the next episode as well, for the Thanksgiving episode, which I will cover next year. Kevin is amused by the fact that they got high, says good for him, and prepares to go to bed. But William is like, not that way. You got moved down to the basement, which is pretty funny. In both the teen and the adult timelines, Kevin ends up in the basement. Randall and Kevin go down together, and Randall's like, you know what? We'll move you back upstairs tomorrow. And Kevin is like, nah, this is fine. Randall says, it's been a day. Kevin agrees. Randall says goodnight. But then Kevin stops him. Kevin invites him to hang out for a little while. Turn on the TV. And Randall says, yeah, for a little while. And together, they watch old episodes of The Manny. Not all the wounds heal here, obviously. But it's a start. And it's 36 years in the making. Beth calls Rebecca, gets a voicemail, and says that she just learned some disturbing information, and she needs her to call her, which is something that will play out in the next episode. In the past timeline, Jack and Rebecca's marital problems don't get resolved. Jack, while laying in bed, asks Rebecca about the rehearsal, and Rebecca says it's okay, they can talk about that later. And Jack just lets her get away with that. He asks her to turn off the light. He's not quite ready to go to sleep yet, so she goes downstairs and makes her a snack. Kevin from downstairs calls for his mother. She comes downstairs and he says, I can't turn the washing machine off. I think it's possessed. You know, the new washing machine. That was the title of this episode that Rebecca was so excited about. Rebecca says that if he's having trouble sleeping, he can always go back upstairs to Randall's bedroom. And Kevin, in response, just puts a blanket over his head, clearly not willing to do that. Keep trying, Rebecca, even though you will fail. And things will not start to get fixed between them for at least another 20 years or so. Anyway, that's all I got for this episode. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are multiple ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at coreproductions.com or join my Facebook group, also called Corman Productions. You can buy something from my Corman Productions store on Zazzle.com. And as always, you can like and share this video, as well as subscribing to my channel. It's possible I'll squeeze out one more video before the year ends, but if not, I wish you all a Happy New Year. This is Dave from Corman Productions, signing off.